Hey guys, welcome back. Hopefully you learned a lot from our last little section of that video you watched and you will not talk on the cell phone while you're in bathtubs or things like that. That's a really sad real life thing that happened and unfortunately that's something that could be avoided. So that's talking about using wisdom whenever we do things. Today we're going to talk about a few more household hazards. The first is falls. It's not something you typically think about with younger people, but it can happen. It is one of the leading causes of accidental death and injury among the elderly. So think about your grandparents and the people that you love that are a little older. There are a few ways to prevent it in the house. You can watch where you step and keep everything where it goes. So when your mom is telling you to clean up, it's not just because she wants the house to look pretty, but it's also to protect you and the other people around. You can also clean up spills. Obviously, when we spill things and the floor is wet and slippery, it's more likely to fall. And just use common sense. Obviously, if we're using common sense in these areas, we won't have an issue with that. The next thing we're going to look at is firearm safety. So I'm not sure if any of your parents have guns or you are around guns. If you are, you want to be really wise with them. You want to make sure they're always stored where children cannot gain access. We actually do have guns in our house, so the only gun that has a bullet already in it is in a closed safe that the girls don't know where it is and they don't know the code to get into it. And then the other gun is in another safe with the bullets somewhere in a separate location. So got to be really wise about that. You also don't want to handle guns unless you've been trained to use them. I've gone to a shooting range one time. It was the scariest day of my life, I feel like. Sometimes it's really kind of scary because they're powerful weapons. So unless you've been trained to use them, you don't want to use them. You always want to handle a gun as if it's loaded. Let's just pretend it's loaded. It's better for it to be loaded than not be loaded. Keep your finger off of the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. Once again, these aren't things you should be doing now, but with your parents' help, maybe later. Be conscious of where you're aiming. Accidental shootings do happen, unfortunately, and it's a really, really sad thing. Unload your gun before taking it into an enclosed area. Make sure your gun is emptied before cleaning it. People have accidentally shot themselves while cleaning their guns. Be aware of federal, state, and local laws that govern the use of firearms. You don't just get to go out and use it wherever you want. There are actual laws that you have to follow. And once again, use common sense. Guns are powerful weapons and they can be used for good things, but be careful with them. The next thing we're going to talk about is poisoning. There's a bunch of nevers and a few always in this situation. So you never want to use medication that's prescribed to someone else for yourself. A lot of times medications can have harmful interactions with other things you take, and if it's not prescribed for you, you should not be using it. Doctors have wisdom when they're prescribing things, and they look at all of the different components when they do that, so don't do that. That is illegal and dangerous. You never want to use prescribed medication after it's don't use after date. There are some things that they put don't use after dates that don't matter, but medication that's prescribed has a date for a reason. Sometimes it loses its potency, sometimes there's more dangerous things. You always want to read medication labels for over-the-counter drugs or nutritional supplements. Sometimes your drugs can interact with one another, so you should not take Tylenol with something else, and if you're not reading labels, you won't know that. Supplements, same thing. So make sure you talk to adults and doctors before you just start taking things, but then make sure you're reading those labels. You want to avoid the use of illegal drugs. Be conscious of what you put in your body. Unfortunately, I have 2 students that have died because of overdoses in the past, and that's something I never want to see with anyone. And I even have friends that it has happened to. So drugs are dangerous, and because they're not regulated and because they're out there, you can be sold something that should be safe, in quotation marks, and not necessarily could be. So there's a reason God asks us not to do it, and there's a reason that we need to watch what we're putting into our body, and that's just part of it. You can also get poisoned by things like gases. So carbon monoxide is something dangerous. You've always heard don't ever leave a car running while your garage door is shut. There's a reason for that. The carbon monoxide will fill it up and it will kill you. And it's something that you won't even know that's happening. If you're using cleaning chemicals, always make sure it is in a big area or a ventilated area, and always wear gloves when handling chemicals that could be hazardous. They can burn your hands or give you problems with that. 2 more things for today, ladies. Don't worry, one day you'll get to make your own video and teach me too, so don't stress about that. Fires and burns while you're cooking. Hopefully you guys are at the stage where you're already cooking for your families and helping out and learning how to do that. Maybe you're doing even more of that now that we're off for this little break. But make sure your burners are not turned up too high. If they're too high, they can cause fires. Obviously, if you're supposed to cook something on high, that's okay. But just keep an eye on it, especially if you have a gas stove. Keep handles of pots and pans turned away from the stove to avoid knocking them over. So if you have oil on the stove and the handle's here and you run past it, it could knock it over. And if you have a gas stove, once again, that oil could leak onto the other and catch fire. Use thick pot holders to protect your hands when lifting a pan or dish. That can burn, and we'll talk about first aid later, but you can get real serious injuries from that. Turn the burners off after using. Unfortunately, people do cause fires by leaving them on accidentally. Beware of steam, it can cause burns. So when you open the oven, be careful that it's not going to come out and get you. And also when you lift a lid off of a pot, you want to be careful with that. Never leave food unattended while cooking. That says unattained. Should say unattended, but nonetheless, don't leave it unattended while cooking. Never use water on a grease fire. Our first thought is, ooh, fire, throw water on it. Well, that'll actually cause it to grow and spread. So for that, you want to use a fire extinguisher. Make sure you know where that is in your house and how to use it. Use common sense while you're cooking, ladies. You can do this. Other things that can cause fires, electrical cords. We talked about overloading an electrical cord yesterday. Same thing. Lights, if they're too hot and they're left next to something. Fires, obviously in a fireplace or fire pit. And there's probably other things that you ladies can think of. So be wise with what you're doing. Last thing for today, what to do to avoid fires. First of all, ensure your home has a smoke detector and that it is operational. Typically when they start to die, they do this horrible, annoying beeping thing, but check yours every once in a while and make sure it's working. You also want to store escape ladders in an upstairs room. If you have a 2-story house, make sure there's an escape ladder you can throw out your window so you're not just barreling your body onto the grass. And have a plan in place. So on the right side, over here, we have our plan. Make sure you have an outside meeting place that your parents know you're going to go to. At bedtime, it's actually wise to close your bedroom door because if there was a fire, it won't go through the door as quickly as an open space. If you've seen videos, sometimes the people will touch the doorknob to see if it's hot. Don't do that. The doorknobs are metal, and so the metal can burn and scald your hand. Instead, feel the temperature of the door about halfway up. If it is hot, try not to go that way. I mean, obviously, if you have no other way, you're going to have to do that. So if you have a window, go out the window. If it's cool, open it slowly and cautiously. A big gush of wind can cause it to come toward you ferociously, but go cautiously. If you do catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. That's the rule, and never, ever go back in. I don't know if any of you have watched This Is Us, but you've known the sadness that happens if you go back in, and it might not be you burn immediately, but it could be something else that happens. If you want to watch something funny later, this is not a requirement, but if you want to watch something funny later, there's an episode of The Office that has a fire safety. It's called Fire Safety. And it's really funny, and it shows you what not to do in case of a fire. Hope you ladies are having a good day. Make sure you answer the discussion questions for today, and hopefully we'll be seeing each other soon. Bye.